What happens when a billionaire makes a cruel remark to a waitress in a language? He assumes she can't speak only for her to reply back flawlessly. Ever notice how a single line, just a few words, can flip the atmosphere of an entire room? That's exactly what took place. It was a warm Thursday afternoon inside a luxury restaurant in Scottsdale, Arizona. The place gleamed from top to bottom. Marble counters, polished wood tables, and soft background music meant to calm nerves, but also to remind you that you were dining somewhere that costs money. The waitstaff moved like a well-rehearsed routine, balancing trays with the precision that comes only from months of back-to-back shifts. That's where Danielle Rhodes entered. The picture. She wasn't the kind of server who blended into the scenery. She carried herself with quiet, poised dark hair, tied neatly back. Notepad always ready, her smile polite, but never artificial. Regular guests knew her by name. She didn't just deliver plates, she paid attention, remembered preferences, asked about families. But that day, the man seated at the window corner table wasn't the type who cared about those things. His name was Farid Al-Manshuri, a billionaire from Dubai, visiting for a series of meetings. He wore a tailored suit that looked pricier than the restaurant's monthly lease, and his gold watch glinted with every shift of his wrist. He radiated the kind of presence that declared, "I get what I want, when I want it." When Danielle approached to greet him, the energy shifted. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome. May I start you with a drink?" she asked, pen poised, voice steady. Fair didn't immediately respond. His eyes stayed locked on his phone, scrolling. Whatever was on the screen more important than the woman. Standing before him, after a pause, he finally glanced up, gave her a quick once-over and muttered, "Water with lemon. Nothing else. No thank you. No smile. Just clipped words, sharp like orders." Danielle gave the kind of practiced nod servers perfect to survive days like this. "Of course I'll bring that right out." She turned away yet in that instant. Faird's mouth curved into a smirk that was half sneer. He leaned toward the younger man across from him, clearly an eager-to-please associate, and muttered something in Arabic. Even if you didn't know the language, the tone said everything. It wasn't friendly, it wasn't casual. It was the kind of remark made when you assume no one nearby can understand. Danielle returned with his water, setting it neatly on the table. She didn't break her professional smile, but her eyes caught just a trace of his expression. Years of hearing Arabic had taught her its rhythm, its sharp edges enough to recognize the insult hidden inside the words. And that's when the tension started to hum. Quiet, like a storm gathering in the distance. Fair didn't notice. He was too busy scrolling, tossing another Arabic remark at his associate, followed by a careless laugh. He thought he controlled the space. The cleverest man at the table, but arrogance often blinds you to the truth staring right back. Because Danielle Rhodes's wasn't only a waitress, she had her own history. One that would soon silence the entire restaurant. But before that moment, the scene stretched. Danielle didn't flinch. Years in the service industry had trained her not to. You learn to handle customers who treat you like furniture, others who unload their problems on you, and then the ones who wear their money like armor, expecting the world to bend. She scribbled his order even though she'd memorized it. "One glass of water with lemon," barked like a command. The order wasn't what bothered her. It was his tone. It's the smugness in his Arabic. It's the curl of his lip as he sized her up like she was nothing. "Would you like to hear today's special, sir?" Danielle asked calmly. Faird barely glanced up. "I said water. Do I need to repeat myself?" His accent was heavy, his words chopped short, each one landing like a slap. His associate shifted in his seat, uncertain whether to laugh, agree, or disappear into silence. He chose silence, staring at his fork. Danielle didn't press. She'd learned better. She just nodded and walked back toward the bar, where a couple of coworkers had noticed. Brandon, a tall waiter, raised a brow. "Everything all right over there?" he whispered. Danielle shrugged. "Same story. Some people only see the tray. In your hand." As she turned, though, she felt Faird's eyes on her, not with interest, not with kindness. It was the cold appraisal of someone sizing up an object. Once again, he leaned toward his associate, words in Arabic sharper. "This time. The insult was clear, now mocking her looks, her posture, the way she spoke. Danielle's jaw tightened, but she didn't react. Not yet. Approaching again, she asked, "Have you had a chance to look over the menu?" Addressing both men, Ferd set his phone down at last and locked eyes with her. There was a challenge in his stare. "Bring me the lamb. Don't overcook it. I don't trust kitchens in this country." Danielle wrote it without a word. She turned to the associate, who finally spoke, polite and almost apologetic. I'll have the salmon, please." "Thank you." Danielle's smile returned for him. "Would you like rice or vegetables on the side?" "Vegetables, please," he replied, relieved that someone spoke to him like a human being. She left the table, but Ferd's laughter followed. Another jab in Arabic tossed carelessly, and once again, Danielle understood every word. What Ferd didn't know was that Danielle had lived in Morocco for years with her grandmother after her parents' divorce. Arabic wasn't just a subject she'd studied. It was a language woven into her childhood, her family, her very identity. She understood every syllable. Carrying the order slip to the kitchen, she handed it off, leaning against the counter. For a moment, her heart didn't race. She'd learned to control that, but something stirred inside. This wasn't just another rude customer. This was someone about to learn a lesson he never imagined. She straightened her apron and walked back to the dining room. The big moment hadn't come yet, but it was closing in the instant when his words, meant to humiliate, would suddenly collapse in on themselves, flipping the entire room's energy. The restaurant buzzed lightly, conversations humming, plates clattering in the kitchen, glasses chiming nearby. Guests talked business, families ate lunch, a couple whispered at a window table. Nobody paid much attention to Ferd yet. Danielle returned with a basket of bread and a dish of butter, the restaurant's usual courtesy. She placed it gently, smile steady. "Here's some bread while you wait," she said. Ferd didn't answer. He looked at it with disdain, then leaned toward his associate and muttered another sharp phrase in Arabic. It's just loud enough for her to catch. "Cheap. Like the one serving it." Danielle paused for half a second, her hand still on the edge of the table. Her face betrayed nothing but inside. The words stung like a slap. She'd endured worse, far worse. But this was different. It wasn't about the bread, it was about her. The associate's eyes darted nervously toward her, sensing the tension building. He obviously grasped what had been said as well, yet he chose not to respond. His quietness revealed everything. Fear of his superior kept him from correcting. Eagerness to protect his position kept him still. Straightened herself and gave a composed nod. "Enjoy," she murmured, turning away. But Ferd wasn't done. Not yet. He leaned back into his chair, loosened his tie slightly, and spoke again in Arabic, this time louder. "Watch the way she walks, as if she owns the room, just a server with attitude. She imagines she matters simply because she carries dishes too. Tables." The words sliced through the air like breaking glass. A couple nearby tilted their heads, puzzled. They couldn't follow the language, but they caught the tone: arrogance, ridicule, contempt. The meaning was plain, even without translation. Danielle stopped midway across the floor, her back facing Ferd, her eyes fixed on the bar. Her fingers clenched the notepad tighter. She wasn't only listening to insults. She was hearing echoes of years of disregard. Years of being told she didn't fit. Years of being underestimated. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. When she turned back, her expression remained unchanged, calm. Composed, but her mind was already preparing for her response. At Ferd's table, the associate shifted again, restless. "Maybe we should lower it," he whispered. Ferd smirked. "Why? She doesn't understand a thing." He waved his wrist toward Danielle dismissively, as if brushing away an insect. "People like her never do." If those words had been in English, they would have earned sharp stares instantly. But in Arabic, Ferd thought he was shielded. He wasn't. Danielle returned to the table to refill his water. She placed the pitcher down, lifted the glass, and poured slowly. Her eyes locked with his, steady, unflinching. Ferd leaned forward, lips twisting. Then, in Arabic, he uttered the line that would change everything. She should be thankful we even allow her to work here. A woman like that belongs in the kitchen, not standing before me. The remark wasn't just offensive. It stripped dignity, devoid of any basic respect. The associate lowered his gaze, ashamed. A man at the next table looked up, sensing the tension. The restaurant seemed too quiet, as though waiting. Danielle placed the glass down gently. No slam, no abrupt motion, just deliberate precision. She stepped back once, her eyes never leaving Ferd's. She had heard enough. What followed wasn't rage, wasn't shouting. It was something deeper, something that hushed the room in seconds. The glass sat between them, condensation trailing down its sides. Ferd smirked, certain of his small triumph, reclining as though victorious. He picked up his phone again, tapping, dismissing her as if she were air. Danielle inhaled softly. Her voice came low at first, gentle but fluid Arabic. "Would you like more bread, sir? Or are the insults already filling you?" The sentence cut through the space, sharp and exact, flawless in every syllable. Ferd's phone nearly slipped from his hand. His head snapped up, eyes wide, his mask of confidence fractured. For the first time since she approached, he looked unsettled. His associate's jaw dropped, stammering between English and Arabic, unable to decide which fit. You speak Arabic?" Danielle's gaze didn't waver from Ferd. "Fluently," she answered, still in Arabic. But its tone wasn't loud, but it carried weight. Nearby tables, though lost in the words, felt the air shift. Forks froze midair. Silence. Spread like a ripple. Ferd blinked, scrambling for footing. He forced a laugh. Sharp, brittle. "Oh, so you memorized a few phrases from a book. Cute." Danielle didn't flinch. "No, I learned it from my grandmother who raised me in Casablanca. Every word you've said since I walked over. I've understood all of it." The associate leaned back, covering his mouth, half shocked, half ashamed. The couple nearby exchanged a knowing glance, sensing gravity even without translation. Ferd's lips parted, closed, his tongue sliding over them as though hunting for a retort, something cutting. Nothing came. Danielle leaned slightly closer, voice calm, unwavering. "You assumed I was beneath you, that this uniform gave you license to speak freely without consequence. But here mere respect isn't optional. Not here, not anywhere." Words weighed heavy in the air. Even those who didn't grasp the language were transfixed, pulled into the shift in power. Ferd sat rigid, hand gripping the table edge. His eyes darted around, realizing all eyes were on him now. What once was arrogance now turned into exposure. The silence grew. Then, from the back, a fork clattered faintly. Someone whispered. Moment throbbed, fragile, charged, waiting for his response. Ferd tried again, his voice softer, authority thinning. You misunderstood?" Danielle lifted a brow, switching into English so everyone could hear. "No, I didn't." Gasps rippled across the nearest tables. Now the entire room understood. Ferd shifted uneasily, his polished front unraveling thread by thread. He wasn't accustomed to challenge, least of all from her. Danielle never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Truth was plain, undeniable. For once, the billionaire wasn't in control. The waitress with the notepad in his own tongue was... But power breeds desperation. Ferd wasn't ready to surrender without grasping back. He sat straighter, face set in forced composure, though his eyes betrayed unease, maybe even fear. Still, he wouldn't swallow humiliation quietly. He cleared his throat, voice pressed into a strained calm. "You think just because you can speak my language, you're my equal?"
Oh.
His Arabic rang harder now, defensive instead of playful.
Yes. Danielle.
Didn't blink. "I don't think it. I know it." She paused, measured. "And that language isn't yours to own. It belongs to anyone who respects it, which you clearly don't." The associate shifted in his seat again, tugging at his blazer as if wishing to vanish. "Ferd, maybe we should." Ferd cut him short with a hand, lowering his tone though venom dripped. "You're nothing but a server. Do you really imagine this little act changes anything? Power is money. Always has been. Always will be. Danielle tilted her head slightly, her face steady but resolute. Money may buy you the best seat in this room, but it can't buy respect. That's earned. His jaw clenched. He jabbed his fork into a piece of bread, chewing sharply, movements meant to signal control, yet betraying frustration. At the window, the couple whispered, still watching. A man at the bar tilted his stool, feigning interest in his phone, but his ears stayed on them. The room's energy wasn't hidden anymore. Every eye was waiting. Ferd slammed his fork down. Do you know who I am? Danielle leaned closer, her tone dropping. Do you know who you are without all this? She motioned subtly at his suit, his watch, the glass at the table. The words landed heavy like stone in still water. His face stiffened. Composure cracking. He wasn't used to such questions. Not from rivals, not from employees, and certainly not from a waitress. The associate finally spoke, urgent, hushed. Everyone's watched. Everyone's watching. Let's just silence, Ferd snapped, reverting to Arabic, face flushed, hand gripping his glass. You think she deserves respect? She's just playing games. Danielle folded her arms, her stance relaxed but firm. Games, she echoed in Arabic, her pronunciation flawless, her confidence turning his word back at him. No. This is life. And every word you've spoken here reveals more about you than me. The silence pressed down heavy. Even the kitchen staff slowed behind swinging doors, curiosity pulling them to the front. Danielle stood unshaken. She leaned back slightly, letting her presence say the rest. Her voice softened, but steel lined it still. Respect isn't handed out like a paycheck. It's given freely or not at all. And right now, no sum in your account can buy back what you've lost in this room. Ferd glanced around every eye. Locked on him some curious, others quietly condemning. His chest rose faster, his calm dissolving. He forced a laugh, brittle. This is absurd. You're causing a scene. Danielle shook her head, her voice cutting the silence with certainty. No, sir. You caused the scene the moment you opened your mouth. For a long instant, nothing stirred. Not a glass, not a fork, not even the air itself. The confrontation stood exposed, undeniable. Yet the story wasn't only about this clash. It was about the truth behind Danielle's strength, the truth that would leave the room not only quiet, but shaken. For a moment stretched long, the restaurant hung suspended in silence. Ferd leaned back in his chair, gripping his glass as if holding on might steady him, though a faint tremor betrayed his nerves. His associate's eyes flicked between him and Danielle, silently pleading for the clash to end. Danielle, however, remained unshaken. She sensed this was her moment to shift the balance of the room, not with fury, but with honesty. In a slow breath, she spoke in Arabic, delivering words neither man anticipated. My grandmother always told me, the tongue is a blade. It can cut down arrogance or raise someone higher. She taught me that when I was 10 years old in Casablanca. A hushed wave of surprise swept the restaurant. Even those who didn't understand Arabic reacted to her tone measured steady, intimate. Ferd's brow furrowed, his confidence wavering. Casablanca, he muttered, disbelief coloring his voice. Danielle inclined her head, continuing now in English so the room could follow. My father's work took us abroad when I was a child. After my parents divorced, I lived with my grandmother for years. She never spoke English. If I wanted to connect with her, if I wanted to truly know her, I had to learn Arabic. She became my world. The language wasn't just something I studied, it was life itself. Every market trip, every bedtime story, every whispered prayer, her gaze locked on Ferd. So when you use Arabic to insult me, you're not only insulting me, you're dishonoring the very thing that shaped me. You're insulting the woman who raised me. The air thickened. No one touched their food. Behind the counter, servers stood frozen, their attention fixed on Danielle. Ferd shifted uneasily in his seat, his voice dropping with hesitation. I didn't know. Danielle's eyes sharpened. That's the point. He never cared. To know her words made his associate release a long-held breath. Leaning forward, he addressed Danielle softly, his voice carrying a respect Ferd had never shown. "Your grandmother, she must have been a remarkable woman." Danielle's expression softened slightly at the memory. "She was. She taught me dignity isn't measured by clothing or wealth, but by how you treat those who can give you nothing." In return, the statement fell heavy, like a stone into still waters, sending ripples through every listener. A woman dabbed tears at her eyes with a napkin. Across from her, a man shook his head slowly, whispering, "Incredible." Ferd swallowed hard, his facade crumbling. His fingers drummed nervously on the table, the reflex of a man suddenly unsettled. Glancing around, he realized the stares weren't admiring anymore. He had become the spectacle. Danielle didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. Her voice remained calm, her posture unwavering. "You come into places like this expecting silence from those who serve you, but you forget, have voices too. And today, I chose to use mine." Her words carried across the room. Ferd lowered his gaze, humility cracking through for the first time. His associate leaned toward him, murmuring something in Arabic too soft for others to hear. But Ferd stayed silent, stiff in his chair, thoughts churning. The rest of the diners, however, weren't lost. They were riveted, drawn into Danielle's story, into the unexpected revelation of a waitress whose history commanded respect. Though Ferd sat cornered by truth, the defining moment still loomed. He would soon have to choose his response under the weight of every watching eye. His polished demeanor was fracturing, like glass under strain. His fingers tapped against his water glass, eyes darting from the door to Danielle, then to the onlookers. For years, he had commanded every room he entered. Here in a Scottsdale restaurant, he stood on trial, the manager. Charles Vega, man in his 50s with sultan pepper hair, had been watching from the bar, unsure how much to intervene. But when he noticed customers frozen mid-bite, forks hovering, attention locked on Ferd's table, he knew he couldn't remain idle. Approaching with composure, he spoke evenly. "Is there an issue here?" Charles asked, standing beside Danielle. Ferd straightened instantly, seizing the chance to recover. "Yes, this waitress decided to lecture me in the middle of my meal. I expect professionalism." Not Charles cut him off, polite yet firm. "I've been watching long enough to know. She showed more professionalism than most people would in her position." A low murmur of agreement rolled through the restaurant, several heads nodding. Aird's face reddened. He wasn't accustomed to contradiction. He turned back to Danielle, voice sharp. "You think you've humiliated me, but all you've done is reveal your place. You're a server. I'm the customer. That's how the world works." Danielle stood her ground. "No, sir. That's how you think the world works." The quiet certainty in her voice pierced deeper than any insult. Guest leaned closer, clinging to her words. At last, Ferd's associate spoke again, this time with undeniable weight. "Ferd, maybe it's time to stop. Hey, you're not winning this." The statement landed like a blow. For the first time that day, Ferd's authority slipped visibly. His own companion had sided with the waitress. His jaw clenched, but his shoulders sagged, scanned the room everywhere. Eyes judged him. The billionaire who thought he commanded every space was now an object of pity, even disdain. Danielle broke the silence gently. "Earlier you asked if I believed I was your equal. The truth is, I don't need your permission to be. Everyone here already knows the answer." Her words hit like a lightning strike. Quiet affirmations rippled across the room. Woman whispered, "She's right." A man near the bar muttered, "Finally, someone said it." Ferd's shoulders slumped further. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, not from lack of thought, but because no words could undo the damage. Charles fixed him with a pointed, "Look, sir, you're welcome to finish your meal quietly. But if this continues, I'll have to ask you to leave." Ferd swallowed, nodding stiffly. His eyes dropped to the table, voiding the piercing stares burning into him from every direction. He appeared smaller now, not due to his suit or his position, but because the one thing he prized most, control, had been taken away. Danielle didn't boast. She simply adjusted her notepad, slid her pen behind her ear, and said calmly, "Your lamb will be out shortly." Her composure only strengthened the message. She had no need to embarrass him. He He had done that himself. As she walked away, everyone in the restaurant seemed to exhale together as though they'd been holding their breath through the storm. But true closure wasn't in the quiet. It was in what followed. When Ferd was left not only to face Danielle, but also the lesson he couldn't avoid, the lamb appeared minutes later, carefully plated by the kitchen staff, who were just as invested in the moment as the guests. Danielle delivered it with the same elegance she showed every patron, placing the dish in front of Ferd as if nothing unusual had occurred. No sarcasm, no lingering glance, only professionalism. Ferd looked up at her, but this time his eyes carried no superiority. They flickered with doubt, as though he wasn't sure what to say or whether he deserved to speak at all. His colleague sat rigidly beside him, refusing to look his way, too ashamed of what had happened. For a while, the only sounds at the table were the clink of silverware and the scrape of knives against plates. Slowly, the restaurant regained its rhythm, though the weight of the moment still hovered in the air. Diners occasionally peeked up from their meals, sneaking looks at Ferd, then back at Danielle, as if cheering her silently. Halfway through the lamb, Ferd finally laid his fork down, cleared his throat, his voice quieter now, stripped of arrogance. "You speak beautifully," he said in Arabic. Danielle tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. "It's not the language that's beautiful, it's the respect behind it." His lips parted, then closed again. For a man accustomed to sealing billion-dollar deals and towering over boardrooms, those words carried more weight than anything he'd borne before. His associate finally broke the silence, speaking softly. "Ferd, maybe this is the kind of moment you're meant to remember. Money fades. Respect stays." Ferd didn't respond. His eyes drifted toward the window, out to the bright Arizona streets where life went on, untouched by his wealth or his pride. He inhaled slowly, nodded once, and whispered in English, "Maybe you're right." When Danielle returned to clear the table, Ferd reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet, and placed several crisp bills on the tray. But when she reached for it, she didn't even glance at the cash. She met his eyes and said, "Respect matters more than tips." Her words carried more weight than the money ever could. Ferd paused, then gave a small, nearly invisible nod. It wasn't a spoken apology. It was the closest he had ever come. As Ferd and his colleague left the restaurant, the room felt lighter. Guests resumed their meals. Conversations picked back up, though the story had already embedded itself. In their minds, they had seen something rare. Not just conflict, but truth revealed. Charles, the manager, walked past Danielle and gave her a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Handled like a pro," he murmured. She only gave a faint smile and returned to her work. Yet the message remained long after the billionaire stepped out. The truth was clear. Titles, wealth, and authority might attract attention, but they can never demand respect. That is earned only by showing others dignity. And often, the strongest voices don't rise from podiums or boardrooms, but from the very people the world underestimates. So take this lesson with you. Never assume you know someone's story. Never misjudge their strength. Never forget that respect costs you nothing but means everything. You're hearing this now? Ask yourself, how do you treat those who serve you? The ones holding doors, delivering packages, or bringing your food? Do you see them, or do you overlook them? Because one day the person you dismiss might be the very one who teaches you the lesson you needed most. Always treat people with respect. If this story moved you, share it. Remind someone you care about that dignity is priceless and respect is never optional.